the fact that trees, they like know what's going on. It's not as crazy. This sounds crazy. I'm gonna figure out the way to say this.
Oh, I'm sure you will.
But it's not like there's another theory where rocks like know what's going on. And like if somebody is killed next to a rock, you can like study the rock and it tells you like what happened. I love it. But that's not what I'm talking about here.
But if someone kills you next to grass, you can interrogate the grass for all the deets.
I'm talking about real shit.
I have come on a mission of gravest consequence. For I am the Watcher, member of an ancient race far older than man. But though our power is great, we are pledged only to watch, never to interfere. But now mankind faces the greatest danger it has ever known. The danger of
the Watchers of Earth 199,999.
Welcome to the Watchers of Earth 199,999. I am your host, Andrew, and as always, I am joined with my co-host, Seth.
How's it going?
Our third co-host, Joe, couldn't be here today because he was being roasted by a raccoon, but our fourth co-host, Uatu, is here, but he only ever watches, never interferes.
I will put in here, Kirsten started listening to the show because I don't talk about my feelings about the movies anymore. And I was like, you gotta listen to the show. And she was like, you talk about me a lot. I'm surprised I'm not a co-host. So our fifth co-host, Kirsten, didn't want to be here, so she's not. Today we watched Guardians of the Galaxy, which premiered August 1st, 2014.
You want to give that a second go?
Nope. Directed by James Gunn, written by James Gunn and Nicole Perlman. A group of intergalactic criminals, Andrew, must pull together to stop a fanatical warrior with plans to purge the universe. So, Andrew, in a sentence or less, what did you think? You have watched this before. I have watched this before. Kirsten had watched this before, but she forgot everything about it.
I liked it a lot. I don't have, it's not that I don't have good memories of it. It's one of those things that got super popular and then therefore became annoying because everybody talked about it all the time and stuff gets taken out of context and just like repurposed as memes. And I find all that stuff irritating. But I thought the movie is the most solid movie we've watched so far. And also, ironically, while it is the furthest from its source material, it is the most comic booky movie we have watched so far. What did you think?
I agree. I really like this. I think it still holds up. Small spoiler alert here. I was probably about halfway through the movie going, I gotta start looking for like a put down. Usually I have a put down at the very beginning. This one, I was kind of just like, yeah, I'm kind of feeling a lot of this stuff. So about halfway through, I was starting to really, really nitpick just to find something to put down. Not to say it's a perfect movie, but...
I will say, I didn't think about it until you said something, but this is the first... Normally when I watch these, I kind of start making the review in my brain. Not intentionally. I just...
I always at least try to look for 2 put-ups and a put-down.
Normally I have usually at least 1 put-up and a put-down by the time the movie's over. Until you said something, I did not really think of anything, although I do have a put-down. I have a very clear put-down, but I think that speaks well of the movie that I kind of went through the whole movie just watching it.
Mm-hmm. I think it helps that it's far removed from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think it helps that they're not like... I mean, they're superheroes, but they're not superheroes. So it feels different. It feels different. It feels like a science fantasy film. It feels like a fun adventure film.
It feels like the closest to Star Wars something has been that isn't Star Wars.
Like we were talking about The Winter Soldier and how everyone kind of said that, oh, it's like a political thriller with superheroes in it. And this is just kind of like, this does that tenfold, where it's just like, this is just like a fun science fiction adventure movie. Are they like, yeah, there's superheroes because it's a comic book universe, but
I mean, I wouldn't even...
You could make this not a Marvel movie, and it would be
I
the
think you
same
can make the
characters.
argument that they're superheroes just because it's like you said, it's a comic book music. They're not superheroes. They're just aliens.
Yeah.
They're just a bunch of weird aliens with their own weird
This could have
alien
been
gimmicks.
non-IP and everybody could have
Yeah.
stayed the same.
And I mean, again, like it doesn't share a lot of, I mean, it does. It doesn't share a ton of DNA with the source material. It picks and chooses its information and its Easter eggs, and it's not a straight
I think because they
adaptation.
were
It
lesser
just-
known, they
Mhm.
had more room to maneuver. Whereas Tony Stark's Tony Stark. Like, Captain America's Captain America. Nobody cares about Star-Lord. You can do whatever you want with him. And I think
But I
they
also
did.
think it's weird. I mean, it shows what kind of confidence, I guess, Disney had with the Marvel universe and in the Marvel movies going forward. But it's astonishing how good this movie looks. Like, money was thrown into this movie.
I think a lot of
and you
stuff
can
looks good,
tell.
yeah. CGI looks good.
It looks good. The worlds look like everything looks lived in. Like, even there's like little background things that are just like nice little touches.
It looked like a lot of practical effects.
To the point like I'm honestly impressed because I would not have been surprised, and most other attempts like this would probably be like, you get your 5 characters, they all got to be humans, one of them's going to be painted green and one of them's going to be a puppet, and that's it. Like, but this is all out. They could have been on one planet, but they do a lot. There's an impressive scope.
Yeah, okay, so irony here is, I don't know how you felt, and you can chime in here. Kirsten said it felt long, and I think I started feeling its length at the end, but I think it moves along at a brisk pace, and it's constantly kind of going from set piece to set piece, but in a way that didn't feel so, like, when you watch a movie and you're just like, oh my god, I get it, it's an action set piece. I get it, it's we're just moving from action set piece to action set piece. I think we talked about this maybe The Winter Soldier. But this felt like it was doing something with those.
I agree, but I will say the movie did feel long. I didn't really feel it until the end, but that said, when I felt it, and I'm honestly surprised that you didn't, at least not enough to really call it out when it is pointed out to you, because spoiler alert to my very clear put down that was clear to myself, the final act is kind of a slog.
I agree.
It's diverse, it's interesting. It's not as much of a slog as it has been in all the other movies that we've watched. They all just kind of like, the third act is just kind of like a big action scene that goes on for too long. This one doesn't go on as long. There's more stuff going on, but like all the dogfighting and stuff, I didn't care. When all the Nova ships line up, I hated it. And I was just kind of ready for that to be done. But then, I think the actual ending is stronger than that and more interesting.
I remembered quite a bit, especially as we were going along. I was like, oh yeah, they get captured. I remember the prison stuff. I remember the prison break stuff. I remember then they had to do this, then they had to do that, yada yada yada. And I think where I started feeling the length was being like, okay, they got to go. I know they fight Ronan on the ground. Like, I know they have to crash at some and that's where I start kind of feeling the length when I'm waiting for something to happen. Not to mention, I won't say spoiler here because I have a couple things I can play with on my put down, but for better or for worse, I think the villains are very lackluster. And since they're the only bit that share, I guess you said DNA with the rest of the cinematic universe, it all feels like, and I think it is, I think it more than just feels like, MacGuffins.
I mean, by definition, I was going to say the stone is a MacGuffin, but it's not, because it has a function. We actually see it.
Performance
it is used.
function.
Therefore, it cannot be a MacGuffin. A MacGuffin literally has to be something that exists to move the plot forward and nothing else. But I will say the villains are not extremely interesting in this movie.
And maybe that's because the heroes are fairly interesting.
And most of it is because the villains are relatively indirect.
Yeah.
And I was kind of dreading early on when the villains were going to... I remembered the exact ending. I remembered a little bit of the flying around the planet at the end, and I remember exactly how they defeat Ronan at the end. But I was not looking forward to... Because Ronan is really bland. And when you get his first scene, you get a bunch of kooky, zany stuff with a lot of personality and character and color, and then you get to this dark thing with Ronan, and there's people chanting and throwing sand on him, and then they paint on his face, and he's just like, I am Ronan, I'm gonna kill everybody because that's what I do, I'm the villain. And I just didn't care. I don't know how much his look I know it changes a little bit, but changes between movies. I thought Thanos looked fucking stupid. I don't think he looks good in the other movies either, but in this he's like all gold. And normally Thanos
All that
is
glitters
like,
is gold.
normally Thanos has like a gold and blue or gold and purple uniform, and this is just all gold, and so he just looks stupid. His helmet is like rounded because they didn't want to give him like the Wolverine things. They're there, but they're not as accented, so he's just kind of like big and boring looking. And so when they talked, and he exists for outside of like one thing where he Skypes on a wall later, he's in one scene.
Yeah.
And he's basically just there to be like, oh, look, it's that guy at the end of Avengers.
I think it's there just to make it so that people who have been following the cinematic universe weren't like, oh, that was a waste. What does this have to do with anything?
Well, I mean, that's what I meant by look, it's the guy from Avengers. But yeah, he is just there to be the connective tissue so that you know that this movie matters. The villains aren't particularly interesting. I remember Nova being interesting. She's not in this because she doesn't really do much. She has a couple Nebula. Sorry, you're right. I never get her name right. Nebula.
Yeah, I figured I had to look. I made sure I looked it up because during the movie I was like, who the fuck are you again? I kept thinking of Karen Gillan as Amy from Doctor Who, and I was just like, I don't think you're doing a good job here. I didn't care for her. But yeah, I mean, what? All the antagonists are like Yondu, Ronan, I'm not even going to include Thanos and Nebula, and they're all just like so boring.
I disagree on Yondu. I think Yondu is interesting. There's not a lot to him, but I think he's interesting.
He's
as
the most
interesting. I think he's as interesting as pretty much anyone else in the cast.
I wouldn't agree with that, but
I don't think he could carry the movie as the main antagonist. But I find him interesting.
He at least had charisma.
Also, I guess that's what I'm getting at, and I guess that charisma carries it. But I'm also, now that I say this, I'm saying this having seen the other movie. And he has a larger role in the other movie.
So you're working on extracurriculars.
I think so, because I don't think I cared about him. Now that I think about it, like I remember not caring when I saw that he had a bigger role. But then when I got to the second movie, I was like, you know what? I cared about Yondu, this guy that I didn't give a shit about before. But I think he's fun. And part of it is, I forget that actor's name.
Woody Harrelson. It's not Woody Harrelson. I can't believe it's not Woody Harrelson.
Yeah, Michael Rooker. Michael Rooker, I think he's a fun guy.
I can't believe he's not Woody Harrelson. I think he's a good actor, though. He just has, it's unfortunate he has that same raspy voice and foldy face.
Everybody in this movie does a good job, but like I said, Karen Gillan is just kind of there. I think it's less her and more just
what she's working
the
with.
Movie not really having much for her to do other than just be a person. She's really just there to be a person Gamora fights.
I feel like, because even Ronan, and maybe you didn't notice this,
that he was Lee Pace, and they had the only way they could hide his gigantic eyebrows was to paint his eyes black.
I feel.
I'm glad that joke hit you.
That's mean.
I'm not saying it's a bad feature. I'm just saying he has big eyebrows.
No, I feel like at least all the I hated the villains in this movie. All the antagonists, with the exception of Yondu, felt like they were kind of like putting on a voice. Did you feel that? Everyone had to be
Lee Pace, absolutely.
Everybody had to do. I mean, it's weird to say.
I mean, Nebula
when talking
too.
About a movie, but it's like everybody like acted.
I will say my big detractor here is he does a good job, but I do not like Chris Pratt. I think he does fine as the kind of like smarmy, like, I mean, he's space Tony Stark. It's the same, just kind of like smug, quippy asshole. He's different, but he's not different enough to not just be another Tony Stark.
I think he feels a little nicer than Tony Stark.
Sure.
His arrogance works for me kind of in the same way that, I mean, like a lot of those adventure heroes are, I don't want to say Indiana Jones because it's wrong.
Here's the thing. I'm not saying I don't like Star-Lord. I'm saying I don't like Chris Pratt. There is something about him I just don't care for. He's a fine actor. I liked him in a little bit of Parks and Rec I watched. I think he does well in this. I just don't particularly care for
This
him.
is going to be my hot take and my hipster. I think he's good. I think everyone loves him too much, and he's like too much in the zeitgeist, or at least he was, and I'm kind of sick of him. Like, more power to him. I'm glad he's doing well. I'm glad, like, he was fine in Jurassic World. Like, he was fine in Parks and Rec. He was fine in this. I think he's a good actor, but it's just like, I've seen him too much now. He's Chris Pratt to me, not Peter Quill.
I guess my thing is also just like every Marvel actor, he's cut and he's like he's beefed up for this role, and I can only read him as a schlub. And it's not because I've seen him in Parks and Rec, because I did not watch Parks and Rec until long after seeing this movie. There's something about him, like, I didn't find him believable in Jurassic World. I barely find him believable in this, because I would believe him if he was just like the schlubby scoundrel, but like, he's a competent scoundrel. Like, that is something the movie goes out of its way to show you multiple times. And again, this is a personal preference. Like, he does a good job. There is just something about him that I don't think he's like leading man material, and I don't really know why. And I know it's mean to say that, but it's just, I don't find him very charismatic. He is serviceable.
So here's
for me.
Here's what I want to say about, I feel bad saying this. And I think it's me, but
Is this something I'm gonna have to cut later? Is this like your Power Rangers?
No. Watching all these Marvel movies, and we've touched on this before, but I really noticed it in this one, and I think because it has felt the most different. But we've mentioned Marvel quip, and Marvel smugness, and Marvel weird tonal changes, and everybody's got to be witty and quippy and stuff like that. I was really starting to hit a point in this one where they would do a bit, and instead of seeing it as a legitimate joke, it felt like corporate Marvel quips. Like, I don't know how to explain it. Do you know what I'm talking about? It feels hollow.
Okay, I know what you're saying, and you don't have to defend it to me. I'm just going to state my side here. I think that might be some of the Marvel fatigue in your general disposition against the quippy stuff, because this is the one that I felt like most of it worked. There were a couple jokes that didn't work, and a couple times that it cut tension that I was like, you could have done it. But I also think this movie has a lot of like genuine moments where it doesn't do that, where another Marvel movie would have.
I feel like when I first saw it when it came out, I didn't have that thought. And so I'm sure you're right in that it's just like a Marvel fatigue. It's something that, like, I know it exists. You know, I know.
So now you're hyper aware of it.
Yeah, I'm hyper aware of it. I'm pessimistic about it. I'm cynical about it. It's something that's just like, yep, we get it. You have to, you're like contractually obligated to like break the tension here and have Peter Quill dance, because that's like a Marvel thing now. And it all feels so hollow to me in a weird way that, like, if this wasn't a Marvel movie, I'd probably laugh at it. And again, I believe I laughed at it when it first came out. So, I mean, with a grain of salt and with, 10 years later. But now I just watch it and I'm like, I get it. Like, I'm watching a Marvel movie, but you didn't feel that?
No, and I actually felt the opposite with this one. This one is more of a comedy than the other movies. Like, this isn't an action comedy movie. Mm-hmm. I felt like most of the jokes hit. There were some that didn't. There's one towards the end that I can't really remember that really did not hit for me. But most of it works. Most of it felt like in character stuff. Part of it is like, I don't know.
It's more fantastical. So the quips, I think, are more at home.
Well, I think part of it is also like, I don't know. I'm used to, like, with the Marvel stuff, like, you reach a point where everybody's quipping, and in this one, it's mostly, it's almost exclusively Peter Quill. There are jokes from other characters, but it's mostly they do something and that thing is a joke in context, but Peter's the only one that's actually saying stuff. And most of his stuff I didn't really care for. Some of it worked, some of it didn't, but some of it was also just like, hey, he's kind of a loser. Like I said, he's a competent loser, but he's kind of a loser. So, like, of course, some of his jokes don't hit. Like, he's doing it for an audience of one. I think a lot of stuff, like the dancing at the end, it's stupid, but it's also
supposed to be stupid.
Yeah, it's supposed to be stupid. It's supposed to be him just like doing something to get attention. And it's also just like, it's different. Like, if nothing else, it's different from the other movies where everybody would have just like attacked Ronan and fought him to a standstill. Instead, we get something different. And as minor as that is, that goes a long way when the last several of these movies have just been knockout, drag out fights for an hour.
And I mean, all that stuff's fair. And like I said, I feel like it's probably a me thing and a past the zeitgeist thing and the knowledge of kind of what these are, and probably watching them week to week. I do not think this is helping. We talk about the binge and reading comics in a trade as opposed to, monthly or weekly or something like that. I do not feel like these movies benefit from a week to week binge.
Oh, absolutely not. I think it's an interesting experiment, but I would not vouch for doing it, especially as your first experience with these movies.
And I also don't think it's worth it to, like, unless you see them as they come out, like, that's kind of your chance, you know? Like, it's not worth it to, like, mark it on your calendars to watch this 6 months from now. So I don't know where else this belongs. Remember when Rocket didn't know he was a raccoon, but Peter Serafinowicz knew about hamsters?
Yes, that is something that does not sit well with me. There's a couple...
You want to talk about that for like 40 more minutes?
There's a couple bits in the movie like that don't sit well with me because it's just kind of stupid. When he knows what a hamster is, I was like, I mean, I guess it's possible that he might know what a hamster is. I mean... It's possible these people like go like he looks like a human. Maybe he went to Earth and just like hung out on Earth for a little while and saw a hamster. But it's I'm sure he's also seen other things that look more like a raccoon than that, and he probably would have seen a raccoon. Maybe he couldn't remember what the difference.
He'd have to go to like somebody's home to see a hamster. He could at least see a raccoon like digging through trash in the wild.
But there's also a bit where what is it? Peter says something to Rocket. It's not in relation to Rocket being a raccoon. He says when Gamora says the ship is filthy.
Oh, and he's like, yeah, I fucking masturbate everywhere.
He's like, if you turn on a black light, it looks like a Jackson Pollock painting. And Rocket responds with, like, you need help?
He's
or
like,
you have problems or something, which is fine. And it's an adequate response because I think you could infer what he's like the gross thing he's getting at there. But it's also like, I don't know. He keeps making these references to things that people don't know and they point out that they don't know them. But then he says Jackson Pollock and Rocket's just like,
my favorite of the masters.
Whatever.
I've mentioned this a couple times recently, and it's probably just growing up with the audience. I thought that weird sex joke was out of place in my comic book Marvel movie.
I think it's fine because it's like devoid of real like
it's like an Animaniacs joke.
It's not gonna hit fingerprints. But the one that was not really out of context, but I did not care for, I really did not like, was towards the end when they're going to fight Lee Pace on a ship and Drax is telling everyone that they're his friend and he's using kind of rude ways of describing them.
I think he only really uses rude ways.
He calls Groot like a stupid plant or a big dumb plant or something. He says something.
I don't think he calls him dumb. He doesn't call him Groot, which is weird because it's like the guy's Groot. Like, you know he's Groot. You know his name.
Drax is also something that doesn't really sit well with me because it's like he doesn't get metaphor, but he also knows like a whole lot of words, so he can like. There's the joke about him being a thesaurus, but it's also just like, I don't know. Anyway, regardless, he says something about Groot. He says something about Star-Lord, and then he calls Gamora a whore.
I think he says Gahora. Nothing?
He does not say Gahora. He calls Gamora a whore, and I was just like, one, not cool. Two, like, why would he say that? Like, even if it was just like, you know, he's Drax, and he just kind of like says what's on his brain.
It's not like she's been sleeping around the whole movie.
Yeah, she's just a woman. And so it's just like, okay, Drax, apparently we're learning that you just hate women and like, I wonder what horrible things you said to your wife. Like, and it's because he needs to say something for her to get mad and yell at him so that they can have the fun little bit where somebody calls him on it. Mm-hmm. And it's got to be her because she's the one that doesn't take anyone's shit. But they sat around in the room. They're like, well, what can he say? And they were like, well, we can't have him call her a bitch. And then they just like, they must have had a list of things and they landed on whore, or someone just said whore and they
you think there's like a ton of deleted scenes of Dave Bautista just going through lines of just derogatory words?
I sure fucking hope not. But I just like, I don't know how they landed on that because there's, even with his like, he just says what's on his brain, there's no reason he should think that.
So I've already said that I like I think a lot of the heroes are really fun. I think they all have interesting things going on with them. Drax is problematic for me in a sense that we've already kind of touched on. He is inconsistent.
He falls into a different version of the Bizarro problem, where Bizarro speaks opposite speak, but in order to understand him, sometimes opposite means the opposite word, sometimes opposite means the opposite intent.
Yeah.
And it just flip-flops wherever. And his whole thing is like, he doesn't understand metaphor. He takes everything literally, but it also means like there's no subtlety to him. He just says whatever he's thinking, but no one points that out. It's, like you said, inconsistent, and I just don't find him... A couple of his jokes are funny. I like his thing where he says, nothing goes over my head. My reflexes are too fast. I would catch it. Mm-hmm. I thought that was funny. That's the only thing I can think of that I enjoyed coming from him.
The other side of it is, out of everybody, I don't feel like Drax has a moment, because for being Drax the Destroyer, he gets his clock cleaned every time.
Oh, you mean like an action moment?
Yeah, like, it works well with the amount of protagonists. I think the movie caters to
I think
them all.
everybody gets an emotional moment. I think there's a lot of good, like, smaller stuff where it doesn't spell a lot of stuff. Like,
There's a lot of character
it's not
stuff.
necessarily subtle, but it doesn't spell stuff out. It just kind of lets characters interact, and you can infer what you need to from that.
Yeah, there's a ton of great character work. But I just felt like you work up to... All Drax wants to do is murder people. And he wants to murder Gamora.
All
and
he
then
wants
he's
to do is murder one person.
Well, he wants to murder Gamora, and then Peter Quill's like, whoa, hold on. And then he wants to murder Ronan, and then we, like, build up to this moment, and I know it's everybody's, like... I forget what it's called in the narrative arc, but it's, like, the falling action or whatever. It's not the falling action. But I know everybody needs to have their downfall. But all it really shows up to be is, like, Drax has just kind of beat up a couple background characters, and then he finally gets his moment to fight Ronan, and he gets absolutely destroyed. And it feels weird, because...
He's inconsistent in his own, not just in his speech and everything, he's inconsistent in his own power levels. Because he's shown to be strong and competent, but like you said, he just kind of beats up Mooks, but then when he fights Ronan, he gets his ass handed to him. And that's Ronan without the stone. Later, when they fight Ronan with the stone, he seems to be... He doesn't even handle his own more, but he seems to have the exact same level of
loss,
success and difficulty in that fight. But then Rocket crashes a fucking ship into both of them. And I would have thought, like, he'll probably be fine. But, like, I don't know why this is the part that really bothers me. He crashes a ship into both Ronan and Drax. And Drax is fine from this. Whatever. Here's my thing, and I don't know why this is the part of this that bothers me. It goes out of its way to show that Quinn grabs Groot and pulls him out of the way, and out of anybody to get hit by a ship, Groot is the one I would think would be fine.
He wasn't near Drax.
I didn't like how there was also just speaking of inconsistencies, and Groot is fine. He can do kind of whatever the plot needs him to do, which is honestly not a whole lot. He just kind of like does stuff, and it's fine by me. But we get the whole emotional thing when Ronan's ship crashes and Groot kind of grows himself around everybody, and then he says, "We are Groot," and Rocket is crying and says, like, "You'll die," and it's a big emotional thing. But then we learn that Rocket knows that if he just gets a piece of Groot, he can regrow him again. And maybe he doesn't know this.
I was going to say, I don't know.
Like, he may not actually know that, but he makes it a point to grab a piece, and then he plants it, and then we learn pretty much right after that it starts growing again. And so it was just kind of a thing where it's like, I feel like he knew. You could say he didn't, but like...
I would say he didn't know, but I think it would have worked a lot better making it like a post-credit thing. Like, having Rocket grab some sticks and putting it in a pot, I'm fine with. And I'm fine with it just kind of being like, oh my gosh, like, he's growing. This is awesome. He's back. Like, just by happenstance, hey, my tree buddy died. I'm just gonna... this is how flora works. I'm just going to plant it and see what happens. So I'm fine with that, but I think, like you said, the very next scene, they're all just like, look at our buddy Groot growing.
There's also, speaking of the end, and just something that I felt was weird. I feel like they worried the audience was stupid. Either that or the audience would turn on Star-Lord and not give him a chance for the reveal. At the end, when Yondu shows up and says, "You got to give me the stone, we had a deal," and he gives him the stone, or he gives him the orb. He tells him, like, don't open that up. You know what it does to people. And then Yondu flies off, and then he turns to Gamora, and Quinn's like, Yondu's going to be pissed when he finds out I actually kept the stone and I made the old switcheroo. That's fine. But then there's a scene later where Yondu opens it, and it's fine that he opens it later, and we already know what's in there, but he opens it and he finds out that there's a troll doll in there, and then he laughs. Because they have like a complicated relationship. But it immediately cuts to a scene of the Nova Corps putting the real stone into like a secure chamber. And it bothered me because it felt like originally the scene was Yondu leaves, and then we find out later when Yondu opens it that Quill wasn't actually handing it over, and he actually pulled one more twist and got one more one-up on him, and we learn with Yondu that he did that. Then we cut to, because the audience is going to go, well, where is the stone? did Peter keep it? Then we cut to the Nova Corps putting it away. And this could all be me, but it just felt like that was the original thing. And then either the audience turned on Quinn or the audience was stupid. And so they had to have a scene where Quinn told everybody what he did because it felt weird. Like we needed to make sure that they couldn't just cheer their victory. They had to cheer that like they couldn't even have a loss for more than 30 seconds.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
And I think it's because that scene is immediately followed by watching the Nova Corps put it away as if we're stupid.
Well, and it's weird because it's only a little over 2 hours when all these are like 2.5 hours. But it feels like the resolution is really like, all right, we got to get to the credits.
This is, I guess, because we just kind of got into talking about it, this is going to be jumping around. We're not, unless we really want to, it's probably not going to be a whole lot of going through the plot, just kind of like hitting things as we feel like talking about them. But since we're at the end of the movie, I don't care for these movie costumes. They work within the movie, but I kind of like the uniforms, even though it is weird to have them all in a uniform. When they get to the final act, everybody's wearing Yondu's Red Ravager uniforms that have the logo that is known for the Guardians of the Galaxy in the comics on them. And I don't care for those red costumes. I don't care for Quill's stupid, I think I called him Quinn a couple times, Quill's stupid red duster. It's fine, but I just don't like it. I like it, but I don't love it. And part of it is red. I don't know why. I don't really like the color red, and something about like when everybody's wearing red, it doesn't work for me. But at the end, for whatever reason, the Nova Corps gave everybody blue uniforms, and so everybody is wearing a blue uniform. Even Drax has blue pants on. Gamora's got like a black and blue like mini dress thing that's weird. Mm-hmm. But Star-Lord is still wearing a red jacket.
That's his signature
and
look.
I think he looks so much better in blue. In the comics, he wears a blue jacket and it looks so much better. And I think blue is just a better color, and it also looks weird that he's the only one not wearing one like the rest of them. It's bizarre to me.
Yeah, I didn't really think about it too much. I will say, and I remember thinking this when I first watched it, I remember not loving the Nova Corps.
I was going to ask you about them.
I like Nova. I don't know. I just felt like, I didn't need Richard Rider to show up and be another character in this movie as opposed to just like a faceless entity. But I just was kind of bummed that like, oh, I guess this is the Nova Corps.
So the Nova Corps as space cops is fine. It's a decent idea. It's fine. We see some mooks that are wearing like a weird gray version of Nova helmets, but the Nova Corps as just like space cops is fine because that's technically what they are,
right?
But just like beat cops is fine, and I guess it doesn't remove the possibility of seeing an actual comic version of Nova later, but now there's hoops to jump through.
Yeah,
I mean, you could make it just like, okay, they made a super Nova suit later, post Ronin, we had to find something to combat something like Ronin or Thanos ever again, so we made a new Nova suit, and there's only one, and the guy who was wearing it crash landed on Earth, and Sam Alexander got a hold of it. Bada bing, bada boom.
Yeah.
But it is weird that it just it makes it more difficult to get to something like that, and I would like to see Nova, and I don't know if we ever will.
That's kind of where I'm at, where I'm just like, I feel like it's just a missed opportunity for me. We had the prison break. You want to talk about anything with the prison break? Thought it was fine. Thought it was to the point.
I will say this is a movie of, hey, I know that guy. It is just, there is something about people who just love putting on stupid space makeup and showing up and stuff. There's always like movies where there is somebody covered in pounds of makeup, like as an orc or in Star Trek or whatever. There's always somebody who's just like, I know that guy, but sometimes you don't even recognize him because they're in masks. Did you notice Nathan Fillion in this movie?
I did not. Kirsten and I were talking about the two actors from Gilmore Girls.
I assume one of them was the pink girl who gets blowed up by the stone. Oh, I wouldn't know.
No, it's Yondu's right-hand man.
His right-hand man, I think, is James Gunn's brother. He's also from Gilmore Girls? I didn't know that.
And then Peter Quill's grandfather at the beginning.
Nathan Fillion is apparently the big CGI blue man.
Oh, well, that doesn't count. You mean voice-wise?
I'm just saying. Yeah.
Oh.
Even though it doesn't sound anything like him.
I was having trouble finding Bradley Cooper in Rocket Raccoon.
I kind of heard it, but yeah, he does a good job disguising himself. At the beginning, I believe it's Nova Prime is taking a phone call from someone in a bunch of stupid space makeup, and I recognize the voice. It's Sparks Nevada. Is it Mark McConville? No, that's
no,
someone
it's he also plays Holt's boyfriend in
Yeah,
Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Holt's husband in Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Yes.
I cannot think of his name.
I can think of the letters of his name, but I can't picture them. I know how they all form, but I don't know what they are. I keep wanting to say Ewan McGregor because I think there's you thought it was an MM. I bet this is so fascinating for everybody. I'm on it. Mark Evan Jackson.
Mark Evan Jackson.
I didn't even read it. It came to me.
And then the post-credit scene, Howard the Duck. Do you know who voiced him?
No.
Seth Green.
Hey, that's my first name too, Seth.
I like how you pointed it out in case I was confused.
I was pointing it out to him.
But yeah, the prison scene's fine. It's fun enough. It establishes everybody, gives them something to do. Drax is just kind of there until
he's not.
the prison break happens.
Then what? There's nowhere, which was fine. I mean, a lot of these things, I guess, after the fact. I mean, what? It's been an hour since I finished it. A lot of it's good. I mean, we talked about. I guess I talked about the stuff that interested me. I think all this stuff's good. I think all this stuff's fine. I don't really know if I have anything to pick apart on any of these things.
To cover the plot that wasn't really covered in that IMDb summary.
Yeah, it was really short.
Peter Quill is a smuggler who was stolen from Earth as a child when he was 10-ish or something. We open up seeing him steal something from a planet. It's like a little orb thing.
Is this the Power Stone?
Yes.
Love that game.
He stopped by some guys who work with Ronan the Accuser. Quill escapes with the orb. Gamora is sent because Gamora and her sister Nebula?
Yes.
I have to think every time. We're basically on loan to Ronan by Thanos. He sends Gamora to go retrieve it when Quill tries to sell it. When he mentions that Ronan tried to stop him, the guy who was buying it was like, I want no part of this. Ronan the Accuser is a crazy person who wants to destroy our planet. Whatever the planet is that the Nova Corps is on.
Xandar.
Yeah. He is also found by Rocket and Groot, who are just looking for bounties. I guess they are basically bounty hunters, and apparently thieves and a whole bunch of other things. But a big fight ensues. They are captured by the Nova Corps, thrown in prison. They break out with the stone. They go to sell it to... I guess Gamora was going to betray Ronan and sell the stone to someone else, the Collector, who I guess was supposed to be a safe place to put it because all he does is collect. So he has the means to guard his many collected things and would have no interest in using it, only has interest in owning it. So they go to Nowhere, which is a giant celestial head, to sell it to him. While they're doing that, Drax calls Ronan and tells him where they are because he wants to kill Ronan because Ronan killed his family. Ronan comes. Hilarity ensues. The stone blows up a little pink lady because she is like a slave to the Collector. And did you notice all the stuff in the Collector's collection?
I didn't really care to look.
I noticed this time there is a whatever the hell the aliens were from Avengers that I cannot remember.
Chitauri.
And there is a elf shown prominently in one of the cages. And then I think I saw it. I remember people saying it's there. And I think I remember seeing it in a scene. Adam Warlock's egg cocoon thing is in there. And then there's also Cosmo, the psychic Russian dog that never speaks in this movie. He's just in a little spacesuit.
He's speaking. It's just all mentally, so we don't hear it. He's not speaking to us.
And then we learn later that Howard the Duck is also there. And that's all the stuff that I noticed. There's probably some other things.
I'm sure there's a list somewhere online. 10 things you didn't see in the Collector's office.
Skip over a bunch of things. They get captured by Yondu, make a plan with Yondu to make buku bucks by getting the stone back from Ronan. They alert Xandar and let them know that Ronan is coming. The Nova Corps ships that are shaped like the Nova symbol are kind of neat when they make a big net to stop his ship.
It doesn't make any sense, but it's
stupid.
A fine...
It's a neat idea, or it's a unique idea that I found boring and stupid. But they make a big dumb net to catch his weird rotating column ship thing. They have a plan to burst in and use something that Rocket made to blast Ronan to pieces. Ronan is too powerful with the stone because he can't... No one can wield the stone on their own. It's too powerful. So he puts it in his staff, and apparently that's fine for him. But the ship crashes because he's too dang powerful. Groot dies, saving everybody. Ronan is about to destroy the planet, and then Quill dances to distract him. Then they shoot him, or they shoot his hammer thing with a gun that Rocket was making while he was distracted. Blow it up. Quill grabs the stone. I don't like how they both are diving for the stone, but Ronan is right there, and Quinn was like
he has to like dive and do a thing
6 feet away. And we know he has rocket boots, but he never turns them on. And I was like, he's going to turn on those rocket boots so he can get there before Ronan, because he is still, like, as we're watching it in slow motion, it is literally right in front of Ronan's hand, and Quill is still like a foot away. But he doesn't. He grabs the stone. It starts to kill him, but then everybody joins hands, and through the power of friendship, they are able to use the stone to destroy Ronan, and then bada bing, bada boom, we kind of covered everything else that happens with that. I don't really know. I was thinking maybe we'd see more things to talk about as I went through it, but not really. So I kind of wasted everybody's time for 3 minutes. But if you were confused because you didn't watch the movie and IMDb summary didn't do anything for you, rewind, and now other stuff will make sense. Maybe. Probably. I also skipped a bunch of crap.
I know like my put down now.
I do like the power of friendship bullshit. Yeah. That stuff always works for me. I thought a lot of the emotional stuff worked.
The character stuff is great.
It is very good.
I mean, the whole like climactic scene where they all are like, we're all friends is really good. And you know what? I'm even fine with the tension deflating or like the tone deflating Rocket quip where he's just like, we're all just standing assholes.
I thought that was good.
It works.
Like standing around like a bunch of jackasses or whatever.
Yeah.
I like that. I even like the stuff that normally would be really stupid to me, but just worked well.
You like when Peter Quinn was like, hey, you got my dick note. You don't even remember that.
No, I know what you're talking about. I even like the bit where he reads the note from his mom and she calls him Star-Lord. And it's like stupid, and I don't really know.
I didn't like that.
It worked for me, and I can get why it didn't work for you. And honestly, in almost any other circumstance, it wouldn't. Like, I'm surprised it worked for me. Because partway through the movie, I remembered, I was like, I think the present from his mom calls him Star-Lord. And I was like, that's going to happen, and it's going to be so dumb. But by the time we got to it, I was like, kind of works. Like, he's really hung up on this thing about his mom. Like, the whole reason not the whole reason, but when he first grabs Gamora's hand, because she reaches out to him when he's holding the stone and he's dying. And they did learn, the collector kind of tells them about the stones, and he says like they're too powerful for a single person, only like the Celestials could use them. But he did say like one time like a group of people were able to use it, but it destroyed everybody. It destroyed them anyway, but they were still able to wield it for a brief period of time. So they know that like joining hands will at least do better than him using it on his own. But when she holds out his hand, or her hand, tells him to take her hand, he flashes back to the beginning of the movie where his mother was dying. She asks to hold his hand and he doesn't. And so he grabs it. I thought that worked. And so like the emotional stuff, like when he gets to the end and he reads the note and she calls him her little Star-Lord, it's stupid. And honestly, in any other context, it wouldn't work. And I don't know why it worked for me here, but it did.
Yeah, them killing Ronan didn't work for me either. And that might have been more just because I was ready to be done.
So you wanted them to have a big knockout, drag out fight instead.
Yeah, I really just wanted everybody to punch each other for like 40 minutes and then a blue space laser. No, I don't know. Maybe kind of like your Star-Lord thing. Maybe in a different time or place, or me, like I would have watched these jackasses just hold hands and do like the electric, like, but that was happening. I was just like, this is fucking stupid.
I am susceptible to the power of friendship, and so it worked.
I think the moment's good when they all like come together, but there's something weird about it that just rubbed me the wrong way, where I was like, once my brain was like, you're just watching a whole bunch of people act and like they're just shaking and all this stuff is CGI. I was like, this is stupid.
Wait, people were acting?
Yeah, this wasn't a documentary. This was a mockumentary.
You can't just make stuff up.
No, see, Yondu was a parody of Michael Moore.
But yeah, that's kind of it. We learned that he has a present from his mother that he never opened.
It's a cassette tape.
It's a cassette tape that says Awesome Mix Volume 2, because the whole movie he's obsessed with this Walkman that he has that has Awesome Mix Volume 1 on it. But it's kind of it. Bada bing, bada boom. So Seth, 2 put-ups and a put-down.
I could have talked about this earlier. I don't know. Sometimes I want to just save them for my put-ups and put-downs, because then I can actually talk about it instead of just being like, I already talked about this, but this. I really like in the prison when Rocket's telling the plan and Groot is just back there like pulling the thing down. That's a good moment. And especially, we were talking about it in The Winter Soldier? weren't they like talking about a plan? There was like an Ocean's 11 thing going on, and you didn't care for it, and I did. This is like a way better way to do that. And I thought the comedic timing was good. I thought everything just kind of worked there. My second put up is going to be, I am trying not to do blanket statements here, so I think I'm going to just zoom in on the climax of everybody being like, we're friends and family, and like we're all standing up, and like we're all gonna, like, this is the plan, and it's a death wish, but we're gonna do it. We're all in this together. That's a really good character moment in the midst of a lot of really good character moments. My put down, like I said, I was kind of coming up with nitpicks here and there, and I think I'm going to end up with, I think the antagonists are just kind of boring, and I think it kind of drags the climax down, because who cares about Ronan, and who cares about Nebula? You care a little more about Yondu, but even he doesn't really do much. It's just, all of the antagonists feel like a MacGuffin. Like, it's just like, we just gotta get through all the character stuff, and they have to have motives. So this is it. But it's like, I don't care about any of it.
So my first put up is, I think this is some of the strongest character work. This is the strongest character work we've seen so far.
Yeah, I would agree.
I think, especially through the main cast, like you said, the villains aren't really anything, but the main cast, like, everyone feels more or less fully realized. They all feel different. There's some good, like, it doesn't really beat you over the head with a lot of stuff. Like I said, it's not subtle, but there's a lot of stuff that it doesn't like sit you down and tell you like, this is what Rocket's deal is. You kind of learn just kind of by seeing him and by hearing the way he talks about things, and he has this little breakdown, but that's the most you get to like the origin of Rocket. And to that extent, like, I didn't really believe the we became friends stuff, because they spend the whole movie kind of bickering and fighting with each other and actively out to like betray and kill each other, until suddenly they're just like, they're our friends now. Like when Rocket's like, all right, we're gonna fucking leave because Ronan has the stone, so I don't give a shit anymore. And Groot's like, well, we gotta go save them. And he's like, why would we go save them? And then again, Groot is saying, I am Groot. And then Rocket interprets, but Groot's like, they're the only friends we've ever had. And I was just like, are they though? Like, I would believe Groot believes that, but I wouldn't believe Rocket would agree with him at that point.
But I think Rocket also, I mean, Groot's Rocket's best friend. If you were like, we gotta save Pete, I'd be like, okay, I guess.
But only because you want to.
Yeah, that's the you thing.
But the power of friendship, like, that stuff I'm just kind of susceptible to. So whether I believed that they got there when they did get there, it worked for me. My second put up, I think the movie looks really good.
Mm-hmm.
It's colorful, it's vibrant, it's interesting. There's a lot of like just background characters that just look interesting. Like, I think most scenes, if you look in the background, you'll see something, whether it's just an interesting character or somebody doing something interesting. It felt like a lived-in galaxy. And like I said, I feel like it's the strongest version of Star Wars that I've seen that isn't just Star Wars. Not that I like Star Wars. So that's some weird praise there, coming from a Star Wars hater. My put down, though, is the ending. And it comes from a bit of like what you said. The villains are nothing, so when we get to basically the ending is the villains doing stuff, and I was just like, I don't care. But like I said, the dog fighting I don't care for, the giant stupid net I don't care for, the battle with Ronan I didn't care for, also because like when they're in Ronan's ship, all the color gets sucked out of the movie again. It just looks like every other Marvel movie we've watched.
Yeah, love to see it.
And I just didn't care at that point, and I was kind of ready to be done. But like I said, they defeat the villain with the power of friendship and the power of a power stone.
Which the power stone was just the friends we made along the way.
But that's, like I said, it's a clear put down for me. But I mean, if that's my put down,
you'll take it.
It's pretty high praise so far. So Seth, where do you put this in your overall rankings?
One, baby!
Look at that. You were saying like every movie we'd sit down and you put it at the bottom of the list, and this one makes it straight to the top.
We started at the bottom, now we're here. Thanks for laughing at that.
I didn't, but hey. I did laugh at you thanking me.
No, I was pretending like you did so that the readers who don't, I guess who convert this to read later, would know that you laughed at my joke.
I will tell you, this is my fucking list, and I can rate it however I want, because I will say this is the best movie we've seen yet. I put it in second place under The Winter Soldier. I like The Winter Soldier more. I don't really know why, because this was very good. I have more positives for this. I think I would rather watch this again over The Winter Soldier, but I like The Winter Soldier more than this. So I mean, if I'm honest, it's the best movie we've seen yet, but it is number 2 on my overall list of every Marvel movie ever and the Snyder Cut.
That's fair. Thanks for hanging out with us. If you like this, tell a friend. If you didn't, then lie to a friend. Check us out on Twitter at SoHowAbout. You can find me on Twitter at SethKumpf. You can find Andrew on Twitter at TessuDownist. And subscribe to us on YouTube at SoHowAbout.
And join us next time when we do this once more with Interference.
Watcher. Boop, boop.
Seth, now that the mics are off, what are we watching next week?
Well, Andrew, I'm glad you asked. We're going to be watching Avengers again. Marvel's The Avengers Age of Ultron. That's my bit. Nothing came to me. I just kept saying words, hoping one of them would change, but nope. We started at the bottom, and we're still here.